Chosen one, let me tell you something they never told you. The fire that tried to destroy you, it was never meant to kill you. It was meant to forge you. Because not everyone gets broken the way you were broken. Not everyone gets tested at the level you were tested. And not everyone, not even 1 in a million, gets to come back the way you came back. You were chosen. Not for comfort. Not for a quiet, easy road. You were chosen for the storm, and you survived it. There was a moment, you remember it, when everything collapsed at once. When the people you loved the most turned their backs. When the dreams you had built brick by brick, with your own 2 bleeding hands, crumbled overnight. When you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back at you. When you hit the floor so hard that the ground itself shook beneath you. When silence felt louder than screaming. When your chest was so heavy you couldn't breathe. When you asked the universe, why me? And the universe didn't answer. That silence. That was not abandonment. That was preparation. Because chosen ones don't get easy answers. They get endurance. They get stripped down to nothing so that what is rebuilt is unbreakable. They get sent into the darkness not because they are forgotten, but because they are being equipped for a light so bright, ordinary people would go blind standing next to it. You were not broken. You were being redesigned. Think about the greatest forces in nature. Steel doesn't become steel without fire. Diamonds don't become diamonds without centuries of crushing pressure. Gold doesn't become gold without the furnace. The universe was not punishing you when it put you through the pressure. It was making you into something rare, something irreplaceable, something the world had never seen before and will never see again. You. Look at where you were. Look at what you carried. Look at what you walked through with nothing but your own will, your own breath, your own stubborn refusal to stay down. No army behind you, no applause from the crowd. No one cheering you on in the dark hours of 3 a.m. when you were sobbing on the bathroom floor, begging God for a sign that it was all going to be okay. And yet you got up. That is not small. That is not ordinary. That is the rarest act of courage that exists on this earth. To rise when every single cell in your body is screaming at you to stay down. To keep walking when you can't even see the road. To keep breathing when the air itself feels like it has turned against you. They don't write about that kind of bravery in textbooks. They don't give trophies for it. But heaven noticed. Every invisible tear you cried in silence, heaven catalogued it. Every night you chose to survive instead of surrender, heaven recorded it. Every time you whispered, I will keep going through gritted teeth and shaking hands, heaven leaned forward and said, watch this one. This one is different, because chosen ones don't quit, even when they want to, even when logic says to, even when everyone around them has given up and moved on and written their obituary before they were even dead. Chosen ones find something buried underneath all the rubble, something small, something fierce, a flame so tiny it shouldn't have survived, but it did. It always does, because it is yours. And nothing in this universe can extinguish what was divinely placed inside of you. Now let me tell you what happened when you fell silent, while you were in that cave of your lowest moment, while the world forgot about you, while people whispered and doubted and wrote you off. Something extraordinary was happening beneath the surface. The roots were going deeper, the foundation was being reinforced, the character was being carved, the muscles that matter, not the ones in your body, but the ones in your spirit, were being built in ways that no gym, no mentor, no success could have ever built them. Failure built you. Betrayal built you. Loss built you. Loneliness built you. Every single thing you thought was destroying you was actually drafting the blueprint of your greatest version. And then, oh, and then, you came back. Not loudly, not with fireworks, not with a press conference. You came back quietly, slowly, with calloused hands and a steady gaze and something in your eyes that was not there before. A knowing, a depth, a gravity that makes even rooms full of powerful people go quiet when you walk in, because they can sense something about you that they cannot name. They can feel it. They don't know your story, but they feel the weight of what you've survived radiating off of you like heat from a furnace. You came back different. And different in a way that changed the equation of everything. The version of you that existed before the breaking. That version was good. That version had potential, but this version that walked through the valley of shadow and came out the other side, this version is terrifying in the best way. This version doesn't flinch, this version doesn't beg, this version doesn't shrink to make small people comfortable. This version knows exactly who they are and exactly what they are capable of, and no amount of doubt from the outside world can shake that foundation, because that foundation was tested by the very worst that life could throw at it, and it held. When God looks at what you have become, even the divine pauses in something close to awe, not because you are perfect, but because you chose this. You chose to come back when you didn't have to. You chose to rise when falling would have been so much easier. You chose to love again after being shattered. You chose to dream again after being humiliated. You chose to build again after watching everything burn. That kind of faith, not religious faith, but the faith that says, I am not done, I refuse to be done. That is the rarest, most powerful energy in all of creation. The universe reorganizes itself around people like you. Doors that were closed begin to open. Not because luck found you, but because you finally became someone who knows how to walk through them without apologizing. Opportunities that passed you by before now seem to chase you down, not because the world became kinder, but because you stopped waiting for permission and started moving with the authority of someone who has already been through the worst and is still standing. People who doubted you are now watching, and they don't say it out loud. Pride won't let them. But in the quiet of their own minds, they are thinking about you. They are wondering how. They are asking themselves what happened. Because the person they dismissed, the person they counted out, the person they stepped over, that person is now standing taller than anyone in the room. Let them watch. That was always part of the plan. Because your story was never just for you. The reason you were put through what you went through, at that specific magnitude, at that specific intensity, is because the people you are meant to reach one day need to see what you survived. They need to look at you and believe that they too can make it through. They are coming, they are on their way to you, broken in the same places you were broken, gasping in the same dark, and when they find you and hear your story, it will be the difference between them giving up and choosing to live. Your comeback is not just your testimony, it is their lifeline. That is the responsibility of the chosen one. That is the weight you carry. That is why the path was never easy. Because you were being prepared not just to win but to lead. Not just to succeed but to serve with the kind of authority that only suffering can grant. Because anyone can stand in front of a crowd and quote inspiration they read in a book. But you stand in front of people, and every single word that comes out of your mouth is soaked in lived experience. In real pain, in real survival, and people feel the difference. They always feel the difference. Now hear this, and hear it deeply. You are not at the beginning. You are not at the middle. You are at the threshold, standing at the door of everything you ever asked for, everything you ever prayed for in the dark, everything you quietly held in your heart when you were too afraid to say it out loud. You are standing right there. And the only thing between you and everything on the other side is the decision, made once, made clearly, made with your whole chest, to walk forward and never look back. The version of you that doubted everything, that chapter is closed. The version of you that begged for scraps from people who never deserved your power, that chapter is closed. The version of you that shrank and apologized and made yourself small to fit into spaces that were never designed for you, that chapter is closed. This is a new chapter, and in this chapter you walk differently, you speak differently, you choose differently, because you have paid the tuition for this wisdom in the hardest currency that exists, in time, in pain, in tears, in the kind of loss that restructures a person from the inside out. And now that education is complete, and you will not waste a single lesson, from this point forward, every step you take is with the confidence of someone who has already faced the worst and discovered that the worst could not finish them. From this point forward, every room you enter belongs to you, not because you are arrogant, but because you are aware of your purpose, aware of your power, aware that you were not placed on this earth to be ordinary, to be average, to spend your days chasing the approval of people who are still asleep. From this point forward, you move with intention. You choose with clarity. You love with boundaries. You build with vision. You rest without guilt. You rise without permission, because chosen ones don't ask if they are allowed to be great. They already know the answer. And yes, the road ahead is not without challenge. There will be more tests. There will be more moments when the weight feels impossible. There will be people who try to pull you back to who you used to be because your growth makes them uncomfortable. There will be seasons of solitude, seasons of doubt, seasons where you question everything all over again. But here is what is different now. You are different now. You have been through the fire. You know what it feels like to survive what should have broken you. You know the sound of your own voice when it whispers, "Keep going," at 3 a.m. You know the feeling of standing back up after the world has knocked you flat. You know, in your bones, in your marrow, in the deepest part of your soul, that you are not built to stay down. That knowledge is undefeatable. No person can take it from you. No circumstance can strip it away. No failure can erase it. It is permanently written into who you are, carved there by the very trials you once cursed, engraved there by the pain you once begged to be removed. And now, standing on the other side of all of it, you understand why none of those prayers were answered the way you wanted them to be. Because the answer was better. The answer was you. Stronger, wiser, fiercer, deeper, more alive than you have ever been. You came back. Not just surviving, thriving, not just breathing. Burning, with purpose, with passion, with the kind of fire that does not destroy but illuminates everything it touches. The universe looked at you in your darkest hour and saw something worth saving, worth shaping, worth sending back into the world as a force of nature. And now the world will feel it. Now go. Walk into your purpose with everything you have. Leave no dream uninvested. Leave no gift buried. Leave no version of yourself on the table out of fear or comfort or smallness. You were chosen for this. You survived for this. You came back for this. And even the heavens leaned in to watch what happens next. Because chosen ones don't just come back. They come back and change everything. Chosen one. Let me say this to you slowly because you need to hear every single word of it. The storm that hit your life, the one that took everything, the one that left you standing in the rubble of what used to be your world, that was not an accident, that was not bad luck, that was not the universe making a mistake with your name. That was selection. You were looked at, assessed, and chosen specifically because something inside you was strong enough to survive what most people would never even be sent. Understand this deeply. Not everyone gets the storm you got. Most people get rain. A little inconvenience, a little discomfort, a setback that stings for a season and then fades. But you got the full force. The kind of storm that doesn't just test you, it dismantles you. The kind that strips away everything you thought you were, everything you thought you had, everything you thought you could rely on. The kind that leaves you alone in the dark with nothing but your own breath and the question of whether you have the will to take the next one. That level of trial is not given to ordinary people. It is reserved. It is allocated specifically and deliberately to those who carry a purpose so large that only that magnitude of pressure could prepare them for it. The fire in your life was proportional to the destiny on your life. The bigger the calling, the more intense the forging. And yours was one of the most intense because what you were being built to carry, to do, to become, requires a foundation that cannot be shaken by anything this world throws at it. The pain was not random. Nothing about what you went through was careless or accidental. Every loss was calculated. Every silence was timed. Every door that slammed in your face was shut on purpose because walking through it would have taken you off the path that leads to where you are truly meant to be. What felt like rejection was redirection. What felt like punishment was preparation. What felt like God had forgotten your name was actually God clearing the space, removing the distractions, stripping away the people and the comfort and the noise so that you could finally hear the real assignment. You were not sent the storm because you were weak. You were sent the storm because something in the divine knew, before you even knew yourself, that you were the one who would not break, that you would bend, yes, that you would fall, yes, that you would cry and question and beg for relief, but that in the end, when everything settled and the dust cleared, you would still be standing. Chosen one, Sit with this for a moment, because what I am about to tell you will change the way you see every painful chapter of your life. What you called breaking was never breaking. What you called falling apart was never falling apart. What you named as destruction, as ruin, as the end of everything, was actually the most sacred, most precise, most intentional construction process your life has ever gone through. You just couldn't see it from the inside. And that's the cruelest part of transformation. It always looks like devastation before it reveals itself as design. Think about the people who hurt you, the ones who walked away without explanation, the ones who took what you gave them, your loyalty, your time, your love, your trust, and treated it like it meant nothing. In that moment it felt like betrayal, and it was. But here is what betrayal does that kindness never could. Betrayal teaches you your own worth in a way that comfort never would have. It shows you exactly who belongs in the next chapter, and who was only ever meant for a season. Every person who left without deserving to leave was making space, painful, brutal, necessary space, for what is coming. You couldn't have carried them and your destiny at the same time. The weight would have been impossible, so they were removed. Not gently, but completely. Think about every loss that gutted you, the thing you worked for and didn't get, the relationship you poured yourself into that still collapsed, the opportunity that was right there in your hands and then vanished. Every single one of those losses was a redirection written in a language you hadn't yet learned to read. Because at the level you are meant to operate, you cannot afford to be anchored to things that are too small for your future. Loss was not the universe being cruel. Loss was the universe being precise, cutting away everything that would have kept you comfortable at a level far beneath where you belong. Think about the dark nights, the ones where the silence was so loud it screamed, the ones where you lay awake replaying every mistake, every failure, every moment you felt like you weren't enough and never would be. Those nights were not wasted. Those nights were where the deepest work happened. In the dark, when no one is watching and no performance is required, the real self gets built, the character gets forged, the values get clarified, the vision gets sharpened. You cannot build that kind of depth in the daylight, surrounded by noise and distraction and the pressure to appear okay. It is built in the dark, in the silence, in the suffering that no one else sees. Steel understands none of this while it is in the fire. It does not know it is becoming something magnificent. It only knows the heat. It only knows the pressure. It only knows that everything it was before is being burned away and reshaped into something it cannot yet recognize. But the blacksmith knows. The blacksmith sees exactly what is being created. And not for 1 second does the blacksmith doubt the process, because the blacksmith chose this piece of metal specifically because it had the composition to become something extraordinary. You were that piece of metal. God was that blacksmith. And what looked from your perspective like being thrown into an unbearable fire was from heaven's perspective the careful, deliberate shaping of something rare, something that required that exact temperature, that exact duration, that exact pressure. Nothing more, nothing less. Precisely what was needed to produce precisely what you were always meant to become. Diamonds do not apologize for the centuries of pressure they endured. They do not carry shame about the darkness they were buried in. They do not mourn the weight that was placed on them from every direction for longer than the human mind can comprehend. They simply emerge brilliant, unbreakable, and worth more than almost anything else on earth, because of what they went through, not in spite of it. That is you, that has always been you. The pressure was not your punishment. The pressure was your price of admission into a category that most people will never enter. And gold. Gold goes into the furnace looking like everything else. Ordinary, unrefined, full of impurities that dim its true nature. But the furnace does not destroy the gold. The furnace destroys everything that is not gold. It burns away every impurity, every layer that was never meant to be there, until what remains is pure and luminous and undeniable. Every trial you faced was that furnace. Every painful season was burning away a version of you that was too small, too fearful, too shaped by other people's opinions, too limited by old wounds and inherited beliefs, until what remained was the real you, the true you, the you that was always underneath, waiting for the fire to clear the way. So look back now, not with grief but with understanding. Every betrayal was a blueprint revision. Every loss was a layer being removed. Every dark night was a foundation being poured in silence. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was accidental. Nothing was God turning away. It was all God leaning in, closer than ever, doing the most detailed, most demanding, most loving work, right there in the middle of what felt like your absolute worst. You were not being destroyed. You were being delivered into the most powerful version of yourself that has ever existed. Chosen one, I need you to understand something that will completely shift the way you see everything you have been through. Your pain was never only yours. The moment you think your suffering was a private matter, something that happened to you, something you survived alone, something that belongs only to your own personal story, that is the moment you miss the most important truth of your entire existence. Because nothing about what you went through was contained to just you. The magnitude of your trial, the specific depth of your suffering, the particular darkness you were asked to walk through, all of it was sized and shaped not just for what you needed to become, but for who you were going to save. Yes, save, because there are people coming. Right now, as you read this, as you breathe and stand and exist on the other side of everything that tried to finish you, there are people moving through the exact same darkness you once moved through. They are in the same tunnel you were in, feeling the same walls close in, asking the same desperate questions you asked when you were at your lowest, wondering if anyone has ever survived what they are currently surviving, wondering if the pain will ever end, wondering if they are too broken to be put back together, wondering if God has forgotten their name the way it felt like God forgot yours. And one day, one specific, divine, perfectly timed day, they are going to find you, or you are going to find them. And when that moment happens, when your story meets their desperation, everything changes. Not because you have perfect words, not because you have a formula or a system or a 10-step plan, but because you have something infinitely more powerful than any of that. You have proof. Living, breathing, standing in front of them, proof that the darkness they are drowning in has another side, that the pain they cannot imagine surviving is survivable, that the version of themselves they are terrified they have lost forever can be found again, rebuilt again, made even more magnificent than it was before. You cannot manufacture that kind of proof. You cannot study for it. You cannot fake it. It either lives inside you because you actually walked through the fire, or it doesn't exist at all. And the people who are coming toward you, gasping and broken and barely holding on, they will know the difference immediately. They can feel the difference between someone who read about survival and someone who actually survived. And when they feel that your words come from a real place, from scars and not just stories, from lived experience and not borrowed inspiration, something cracks open inside them. A door that was sealed shut by hopelessness swings open, and they step through it back toward life. That is what your survival makes possible. That is what your comeback creates. Not just your own victory, but a pathway that others can walk through because you walked it first. Think about the darkest moment of your life, the specific night, the specific hour when you were closest to letting go, when giving up felt not just tempting but logical, when staying felt harder than leaving. In that moment, what kept you here? What reached into that darkness and gave you just enough to hold on for one more hour, one more day? Was it a story you heard? A person who showed you that their impossible situation became possible? A voice, a memory, a testimony of someone who had been exactly where you were and somehow made it through? That thing that saved you. You are now called to be that thing for someone else. You are called to be the story that reaches into someone else's darkest hour. You are called to be the voice that finds them in the silence. You are called to be the living testimony that makes the difference between them choosing to stay or choosing to leave. The weight of that is enormous. The honor of that is even more enormous. Because there is no greater purpose a human being can carry than to be the reason another human being chooses to keep living. And this is why the trial had to be at that specific magnitude. This is why it could not be smaller, could not be softer, could not be diluted into something more comfortable. Because the people you are meant to reach were not broken gently. They were broken completely. And a gentle story cannot reach someone who is completely broken. Only a testimony that matches the depth of their pain can get through. Only someone who has been in the same absolute darkness can reach a hand in far enough to pull them out. Your suffering was calibrated to your calling. The depth of what you went through was precisely matched to the depth of who you were going to reach. God did not give you more than you needed. God gave you exactly what would qualify you to serve exactly who needs you most. So every scar you carry is a credential. Every wound that healed is a qualification. Every chapter of your story that you are tempted to hide, to be ashamed of, to bury in silence because it feels too raw or too messy or too broken, that is the exact chapter someone is desperately waiting to hear. Not the polished version, not the edited highlight reel, the real version, the ugly version, the version where you didn't have it together, the version where you cried on the floor, the version where you had no idea how you were going to make it through. That is the version that saves lives, because that is the version people recognize as true. There is someone right now who has been told their story is too much, too broken, too far gone, too complicated for grace, too damaged for recovery, too lost for any map to find them. And they have believed it. They have accepted that verdict and wrapped it around themselves like a sentence, until they find you, until they hear what you came through, until they see what was made from what looked like complete ruin. And in that moment, that verdict shatters, because if you made it, you with everything you carried, everything you lost, everything you faced, then maybe, just maybe they can too. That maybe is everything. That maybe is the crack in the wall that lets the light in. That maybe is the first breath of real hope they have taken in months, maybe years, and you gave it to them simply by surviving, simply by coming back, simply by refusing to let your story end in the dark. Your comeback was an act of service before you even knew it. Every day you chose to keep going was a day you were writing a chapter that will one day pull someone else through their worst. Every time you got back up, you were not just saving yourself, you were saving everyone who would ever hear about it. So carry your story with pride, not arrogance, not performance, but the quiet, powerful pride of someone who knows that what they went through was not wasted, because it was never just theirs to begin with. It belonged, from the very beginning, to every broken person who would one day need exactly what only you could give them. You survived for you, but you came back for them, and they are coming. They are already on their way, and when they arrive, everything you went through will finally make complete, perfect, undeniable sense. Be ready. Your story is someone else's survival. Your life is someone else's lifeline. And that is the most powerful thing a chosen one can ever be. Chosen one, listen to me carefully, because what I am about to tell you is the most important thing you will ever understand about yourself. Something happened to you during the fire. Something that cannot be undone, cannot be reversed, cannot be taken back no matter what comes next. Something that was permanently, irrevocably, eternally written into the deepest layer of who you are. Not on the surface where opinions live, not in the shallow places where confidence comes and goes depending on how the day went or what someone said about you. Deep, bone deep, soul deep, written in a language that no failure can translate, no person can erase, no circumstance can corrupt. You now know that you cannot be finished. Not as a theory, not as a motivational phrase you repeat to yourself in the mirror hoping it eventually feels true. You know it the way you know your own heartbeat, without having to think about it, without having to convince yourself, without needing anyone to confirm it. You know it because you lived through the moment that was supposed to be the end, and it wasn't. You stood in the rubble of everything that collapsed, and discovered that you were still there, still breathing, still thinking, still capable of taking one more step, even when every single reason to take that step had been stripped away from you. That discovery changes a person in ways that nothing else on this earth can change them. Before the fire, your confidence was built on conditions. You felt strong when things were going well. You felt capable when people around you believed in you. You felt worthy when the results reflected back what you had invested. Your sense of self was tied, whether you realized it or not, to external confirmation, to outcomes, to the approval of people whose opinions you had mistakenly handed too much power over your inner world. And that kind of confidence, as real as it felt, was fragile, because it depended on things outside of you to maintain it. Take those things away and the confidence wavered. Take everything away and it could collapse entirely. But now everything is different. Because now you have been through the moment where everything was taken away, where the outcomes were catastrophic, where the people whose approval you once craved either disappeared or turned against you, where there was nothing left on the outside to confirm your worth, your strength, your reason to keep going. And in that absolute emptiness, with nothing external left to lean on, you found something inside, something that was always there but that you never had to access before because you had never been pushed far enough to need it. Something raw and ancient and completely entirely yours. That something is what you move with now. And it is undefeatable. Walk into any room today and watch what happens. Not visibly, not in a way that anyone announces or acknowledges out loud. But feel it. Feel the way the energy shifts slightly when you enter. Feel the way people who have never met you, who know nothing about your story, find themselves paying attention when you speak. Not because of what you say, but because of the weight behind it. That weight is not performance. It is not charisma you practiced. It is not confidence you manufactured. It is the residue of survival. It is the gravity that forms around a person who has been tested at the deepest level and came through the other side still whole. People feel that. They cannot name it, but they feel it the way you feel a change in weather before it arrives. Something about you communicates, without words, without effort, without intention, that you are not someone who can be easily moved, that you have already faced worse than whatever this moment holds, that the things most people use as weapons, doubt, criticism, rejection, failure, have already been thrown at you at full force, and here you stand, unbowed, unchanged at the core, more yourself than you have ever been. This is what separates the returned chosen one from everyone else in the room. Not intelligence, not talent, not connections or resources or perfect timing, not arrogance that announces itself loudly to cover the insecurity underneath, not the brittle bravado of someone who has never truly been broken and therefore has no idea whether they can handle being broken. None of that. Something far rarer and far more powerful than any of those things. An awareness. Quiet, steady, immovable. The awareness of a person who has already been through the worst-case scenario and survived it. Think about what that actually means in practical terms. When other people face failure, there is a fear underneath the fear, a terror that the failure will reveal something unfixable about them, that if they fall too far, they will not be able to get back up, that there is some depth beyond which recovery is not possible. That fear is what makes most people play small. It is what keeps them from taking the risks that their dreams require. It is what makes them hesitate at the threshold of everything they ever wanted, looking in but unwilling to step fully through because the possibility of falling is too frightening to bear. You do not have that fear anymore. Not because you are reckless, not because you have stopped caring about outcomes, but because you have already fallen to the depth that everyone else is afraid of. And you know now, from personal, undeniable lived experience, that the bottom is survivable, that the worst case is not the end, that falling all the way down does not mean staying down. You have that knowledge now, and it makes you free in a way that people who have never fallen can never fully be free. Because your boldness is not based on the assumption that you won't fail. It is based on the certainty that even if you do, you will rise again. You have done it before, you will do it again. That is simply what you do. And failure itself, the thing that paralyzes so many brilliant, gifted, capable people and keeps their greatest contributions locked inside them forever, failure has lost its power over you. It can still arrive, it can still sting, it can still cost you time and energy and resources, but it cannot cost you your belief in yourself anymore, because your belief in yourself is no longer housed in your outcomes. It has been relocated, permanently, through fire, to a place inside you that outcomes cannot reach. You can fail 100 times from this point forward, and each time you will know, without needing to be reminded, that the failure is an event and not a verdict, a chapter and not the conclusion, a temporary result that has no authority whatsoever over your permanent identity. That is freedom that most human beings spend their entire lives chasing and never find. You found it the hard way. The only way it is truly lastingly found, not through a book or a seminar or a motivational video, through the actual experience of being brought to your knees by life and discovering that your knees touching the ground was not the end of you. It was the position from which you gathered the strength to stand taller than you ever had before. So when doubt comes, and it will come, because doubt visits everyone, even the most unshakable, you will feel it differently now. It will knock on the door, but it will not be able to move in. Because underneath the doubt is that permanent knowing, that unwritten law of your existence. You rise, you always rise. You have proven it in conditions that would have finished lesser people, and the proof lives inside you now as an undefeatable foundation. When people try to diminish you, and they will try, because your light makes certain people deeply uncomfortable, their words will land differently now. They will arrive and then they will slide off. Not because you have become cold or closed or hardened in the wrong way, but because you have become so certain of who you are at the core, that the opinions of people who do not know your story, who have not walked your road, who have not paid the price you have paid, those opinions simply do not have the access to you that they once had. The door to your self-worth is no longer unlocked from the outside. Only you hold the key now, and you earned that key in the fire. This is your inheritance from everything you suffered. This is the gift hidden inside the wound. This is what the trial was always building toward. Not just your survival, not just your comeback, not just your success, but this undefeatable knowing, this permanent, soul-level certainty that you were built to rise, that you cannot be finished, that no force in this world or beyond it has the power to write the final chapter of your story without your permission. You move differently now. You decide differently. You speak differently. You stand differently. Not with noise, not with announcement, but with the quiet, settled, absolute authority of someone who has already been through the fire and knows, not hopes, not wishes, not praise, but knows beyond all doubt and all shadow and all question that they are still here, that they will always find a way to still be here, and that nothing will ever change that.